Hey everyone. I never got a chance to, well, first of all, for this pauses and it goes into separate videos that I have to connect together, that I do apologize for that. But I never got a chance to talk about um, I never got a chance to talk about the WWE draft and my thoughts on it. I know a lot of people have their own thoughts on the draft and how they felt things should have been done and could have been done, who should have gone where. Um, I really don't have a problem, honestly, with what they did with the draft. Um, I know there was some decisions that were made, some draft picks that were sent to places they didn't feel when, fans and even themselves felt like they didn't belong in or belong at, but there's always a reasoning for it. Um, I think what we have to realize, honestly, is it's all storyline. Whether this draft was legit or it wasn't legit, whether they knew they were going here or they didn't know they were going there. Um, the fact of the matter is, um, the fact of the matter is, uh, like I said, the fact of the matter is, again, it's all about basically part of a storyline, an overarching. Hopefully, if WWE does it right, overarching story that will hopefully have a good payoff. But knowing WWE's history, that may not be the case. Um, I know a lot of people weren't happy with certain, NXT stars not getting drafted, and you got to realize that sometimes they do want to save certain stars to be debuted, later on. It's like, with Bailey, a lot of people thought Bailey should, have been drafted, but sometimes that's not always going to be the case. Sometimes, Bailey, someone like Bailey might have to stay in NXT for a little while longer to help establish the women's division down there. But we'll have to wait and see. And maybe she is being saved for Battleground this Sunday. If you debut her in a draft as a draft choice, um, then then you're basically spoiling the possibility of who Sasha Banks' partner could be. Now, we don't know if Bailey's going to be Sasha's partner or not. It could be Nia Jax, for all we know, because if there's one way you want to play in the storyline, play that into the storyline with Sasha, Charlotte, and Dana. Charlotte comes out and says she's genetically superior. Storyline wise, why not have her try saying that to someone that's not only stronger but bigger than she is and is superior to her, you know, not genetically, like in ring wise, but basically superior to her from just, a size difference and strength wise. So I think that could work, but then again, we don't really know. Now, Uh, going down the rosters here, going down the draft picks. They had 10 rounds, which is not 10 rounds, but 11 rounds, I believe. And I think 11 rounds. Yeah, they had 11 rounds, and if when we look at the first round, of course, you had Seth Rollins going to Raw, number one overall. WWE Champion Dean Ambrose to SmackDown. You had Women's Champion Charlotte to Raw. You had AJ Styles to SmackDown. Finn Balor going to Raw. So that's an interesting first round. But the reason Finn Balor was, in my opinion, drafted in the first round basically is to set up what will happen later, especially with those joining him on Raw. Now, the second round, we saw Roman Reigns go to Raw. John Cena go to SmackDown. Brock Lesnar to Raw. Randy Orton to SmackDown. And a New Day to Raw. Now, Roman Reigns going there, apparently that's going to be, I guess, part of a storyline going that, okay, let's say Seth wins the championship or Roman wins the championship. It's like, what kind of conflict will that have? We don't know. And as far as the New Day going to Raw, it's the same thing with Charlotte. I'll get into that, as well as with Dean going to SmackDown. I'll get into that later. But, you know, Raw definitely, I will say what a lot of people said, definitely got the betterment overall of the draft. NXT wise, no, they didn't. SmackDown got the NXT bulk and got the benefit, in my opinion, probably got what they could out of NXT. Number 3, you had Sami Zayn go to Raw, you had Bray Wyatt go to SmackDown, Sasha Banks to Raw, Becky Lynch to SmackDown, and Chris Jericho to Raw. I like that because, Sasha Banks going to Raw does open the gates for the next one that got drafted later down the line. Becky Lynch going to SmackDown opens the doors for her to really elevate herself, especially if they're going to do what I think they're going to do. The 4th round, you had Rusev go to Raw, you had who was the U.S. champion go to Raw, you had the Intercontinental champion Miz go to SmackDown, you had Owens go to Raw, you got Baron Corbin go to SmackDown, and you had Enzo and Cass go to Raw. Now, Baron going to SmackDown, I think, opens the door for him because he can be a future champion on that show. Kevin Owens going to Raw along with Sami Zayn, that is to continue the feud, maybe even tag them up. Storyline-wise, if you have Mick Foley as the GM, being as wild and crazy as he is, he might say, you know what? Sometimes best frenemies make good partners. And he might just team them up. Maybe even acknowledge their history as a team outside of WWE. Who knows? Okay, you got Gallows and Anderson going in round 5. You had Gallows and Anderson going to Raw. American Alpha, Chad Gable, and Jason Jordan going to SmackDown from NXT. A Big Show going to Raw. Dolph Ziggler going to SmackDown. Nia Jax going to Raw. Now, Nia Jax, like I said, I mentioned with Sasha, could be the partner this Sunday because from a storyline standpoint, you have Charlotte always saying she's genetically superior. She's never been in the ring with Nia Jax. Storyline wise, she may not be able to say that as long as Nia Jax is on Raw. Just saying. So that's pretty good. And then Gallows and Anderson, that kind of ties in with Balor showing up. So you might have the club or the Balor club now back together on Raw. So that might be good. I mean, basically, they're still confident they're going to take over WWE, so what better way to do it, right? And then in the final round that took place on SmackDown Live, you had Neville go to Raw, Natalya go to SmackDown, Cesaro to Raw, Alberto to SmackDown, and Sheamus to Raw. Now, Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli, is not too happy about it. But I don't know what his little interview shoot, if you will, is going to bite him in the butt. I don't think it will. I think when you look at it from a long standpoint, it might open doors because, apparently he's already, from reality-wise, Cesaro's kind of afraid that it's going to focus more on Stephanie and Mick's interactions, and and you can't blame him for that, but because it looks like it may lead that way, but hopefully that won't happen that won't happen right off the bat, and they'll just focus on the stars. So we'll have to wait and see. Neville going to Raw is a great choice because he could be like a face of that cruiserweight division. Natalya to SmackDown could definitely help solidify her as a legendary diva. So we'll just have to wait and see. Sheamus to Raw, I think, is a good choice. I mean, he's definitely Raw material and definitely could benefit from this and probably be back on top as a champion. Now, we had 4 more rounds after that, but these were all on the Draft Center on the network. You had Golden Truth, R-Truth, and Goldust as a team go to Raw. You had the Usos go to SmackDown. You had Titus O'Neil go to Raw. You had Demon Kane go to SmackDown. And Paige go to Raw. So Paige going to Raw and helping out the women's portion there is really a good deal. Then the 8th round, you had Darren Young with Bob Backlund go to Raw, Kalisto go to SmackDown, Sin Cara go to Raw, who could definitely be a good portion for that cruiserweight division, Naomi go to SmackDown, Jack Swagger go to Raw, and the Ascension go to SmackDown. Now, what I'm surprised about is you don't have no Tamina. That's pretty interesting. But you have Naomi going to SmackDown, so maybe Tamina will go with her. I don't know. Jack Swagger going to Raw. That might not be a good decision because we don't know what they're going to do with him. But hopefully he won't get lost in the shuffle. The ninth round, you had the Dudley Boys go to Raw. You had Zack Ryder go to SmackDown. You had Summer Rae go to Raw. Apollo Crews go to SmackDown. Mark Henry to Raw. And Alexa Bliss from from NXT go to SmackDown. So you got another NXT go there, that being Alexa Bliss going to SmackDown. So I think that might benefit her because, even though it'll be live, it's a good step up because if you look at traditionally, SmackDown just might end up being that second step to the Raw roster. I mean, I'll get into that in a moment. Round 10, you saw Braun Strowman go to Raw, which was a surprise. Brizango, Tyler Breeze, and Fandango go to SmackDown Live. Bo Dallas to Raw. Eva Marie to SmackDown, which some people are thinking, really? Shining Stars to Raw, being Primo and Epico. And the Vaudevillains to SmackDown. That looks interesting right there. And then the last one, you had Alicia Fox. That was round 11. You have Alicia Fox to Raw. Eric Rowan to SmackDown. Dana Brooke to Raw, so she stays with Charlotte. Mojo Rawley from NXT to SmackDown. Curtis Axel to Raw. And Carmella from NXT to SmackDown. And the only one undrafted is Heath Slater. But I think we should also remember it's not just Heath Slater that's undrafted. So is Tamina. Now, unless they let Tamina go, but I don't think so. Unless she's a package deal with Naomi going to SmackDown. Heath Slater and Tamina are the only ones undrafted. Now, we do got some new shakeups in the announce team as well. We have Corey Graves joining Byron Saxton and Michael Cole on Raw, which I think is a good fit. And you have, apparently Corey Graves is going to be the heel commentator signing with Stephanie and all that, so expect that. You have JBL and David Otunga joining Mauro Ronaldo, if you will, on SmackDown. That might be, I know some people are worried that, JBL is going to bury Ronaldo, and hopefully that won't be the case. And David Otunga being on there might be a good babyface color commentator to oppose JBL, but we'll have to wait and see. Some of the decisions here I'm okay with. I mean, I know some people are worried about it, like, Jack Swagger going to Raw. Will he get lost in the shuffle? I don't know. Kalisto going to SmackDown instead of Raw, where the Cruiserweight division is. I think the reason he's going to SmackDown is because if they want to make him the next Rey Mysterio, that's where Rey Mysterio's career really took off and became a world champion. So I would expect them trying to go there. Naomi going to SmackDown I like, in a sense, because she'll get to shine more and get more opportunity. Ascension, I'm not too sure. I'm okay with Ascension going to SmackDown because, going to Raw, they get lost in the shuffle. Alexis Bliss, like I said, it's a good choice. I think she'll do well there. Eva Marie, I think she'll be more of a, I don't think we'll see Eva Marie on SmackDown just yet, but I think she'll be more of a valet as time goes on, depending on what person she goes with. When I look at this tag team wise, I think, Raw may have gotten a little bit more on the tag team deal, but I think it kind of evened out tag team wise. But, I know a lot of people go out and they say, well, SmackDown got raped. SmackDown got, plundered. Here's the deal. They're building up the storyline of SmackDown being the underdog and basically Vince McMahon, in a sense, showing favoritism to Stephanie over Shane. But here's what it really comes down to, folks. Here's what it really comes down to. This is nothing more than another storyline. It's gonna be SmackDown versus Raw. Who's got the better brand and all that? The underdog, of course, is probably going to dominate in the ratings, and people wanting to see it more and talk about it more. That's what's going storyline-wise. I got a feeling. Well, it's going to get more attention. People are going to want to watch it more than Raw and all that. And then eventually you're going to have a storyline, maybe some kind of plot, a subplot in the storyline where some Raw stars and men and women are going to want to go to SmackDown because they get more opportunity there. It's leading to something it's leading into those directions. But overall, what it is basically is it's going to turn out to be Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan versus Mick Foley and the Authority. That's what it is. And honestly, I don't think Mick's going to be much of an equation. I think what's going to happen with Mick is he's going to probably last as long as Shane says he's going to last. And then Triple H is going to come into the fold, so it's going to turn into Shane versus the Authority. That's basically what it is. It's this draft basically, even though it's going to shake things up, it's basically another underdog versus the Authority storyline when you look at it. And the underdog, of course, is going to overcome. Now, what's interesting about this that comes out of this is Heath Slater and even Tamina, even though she wasn't mentioned, are undrafted. Now, from what I read online, they're going to allow Heath Slater to do a storyline where he's going to be able to do something that WWE usually wouldn't allow. And he's going to be able to work Evolve and several indie promotions or independent dates, to play off his free agency storyline. But I don't think it's going to last too long. Now, you might say, well, you might be saying, well, wait a minute. They didn't let CM Punk do this back in 2011. Why are they letting Heath Slater? It was a different time then, believe it or not. Even though it was about 5 years ago, it was a different time then. And mostly CM Punk was one of the bigger stars. Okay, he was one of the bigger stars, artists and everything. And, they couldn't let him go. And they were probably afraid CM Punk, being the more outspoken champion they've ever had, probably would have been the kind to really sign with somebody else and not come back to WWE as champion and do the right thing, maybe drop the title before leaving or sign a contract and remain. So the reason they're able to do it with Heath is not that big of a star yet, but this might help him out. And you kind of get some unique matchups along the way. So whether they then win certain matches, maybe even certain championships to help build his stock so that you have Mick and Daniel, maybe Shane and Stephanie fighting for his services. If that's what they're heading towards, I'm all for it. So, but I don't think it'll last long. I think if anything, it might last maybe just for a few months, maybe a month or so up to SummerSlam, and then maybe he'll get a match, maybe on the pre-show, maybe on SummerSlam, to where if he wins against two competitors, depending on who he pins or makes submit, that he gets in to the good, that he'll end up being signed by that company, by that brand. Like, he could be put into a triple threat with a Raw star and a SmackDown star, and if he pins or makes submit the SmackDown star, he can go to SmackDown. Same with Raw. So I would guess that's what they're going to do. But this thing with Heath I like, because at least it's also in a sense a recruiting thing. So Heath can put recruiting thing for WWE, so they can have someone out there that's actually on their roster go up against some of this top talent on the Indies and in Evolve to see if maybe that talent is good enough to bring in. But again, it also kind of shows that WWE, I think, in a sense, is rewarding Heath by saying, hey, look, you've stuck it out and everything. We're going to give you the storyline, and hopefully this might make you the star you need to be. As far as Tamina goes, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe it's something to do with her father's situation. So I don't know, but she's the only other one I know that's undrafted, unless she's been released, which would be a surprise, but I don't think so. So be interesting where she ends up when she comes back. Again, I don't really have a problem with this whatsoever, because you're supposed to make SmackDown look like the underdog, but what's going to happen storyline-wise is SmackDown's going to end up becoming the favorite of everybody. Basically, what it's going to turn into is an even race, with SmackDown, I think, at most times edging out Raw. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think what's going to happen in the end, storyline-wise, is you're going to have a lot of stars wanting to jump ship over to SmackDown because of more opportunity. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I think mainly what this also is, overall, when you put the draft and everything aside, it's basically Shane McMahon versus the Authority. That's what it is. That's what the storyline is. I hate to say that. Now, as far as the championships, though, go, as far as the draft is concerned, again, because this is going to turn out to be nothing more than Shane McMahon versus the Authority. But we don't know when that's really going to take off. Really, be going to go into overdrive, if you will. As far as the championships are concerned, the champions like the U.S. Championship and the Intercontinental Championship, I believe, are going to remain on the shows that they're exclusive to. But I don't think Rusev and is going to have the U.S. title on Raw. He's got to face Zack Ryder on Battleground, and Darren Young's facing The Miz on Battleground. So this is what I think could happen, unless they decide to keep the championships on the respective champions as of after Battleground, which would be okay. I think what's going to happen is Darren Young's going to beat The Miz, take the Intercontinental title to Raw. Zack Ryder's going to beat Rusev somehow and take the U.S. title to SmackDown. So that way, the Intercontinental title will be on the show where it been mostly noted for. Will be on the flagship show where basically it really got notoriety more so than notoriety throughout its history. So, and the U.S. title will go back to SmackDown where it was resurrected on. So it makes sense. As far as the Women's Championship, the Tag Titles, and the WWE Championship, I think what's going to happen here is we may get an announcement at SmackDown, not SmackDown, but on Battleground, that the WWE Champion, depending on who he is, the champions, the WWE Champion, the Women's Champion, the Tag Champs, can go back and forth between both shows because they're champions and they got belts that people want. The only exception is when they lose a championship, they go back to the show they were drafted to. So, for example, if Dean Ambrose loses, let's say Dean Ambrose retains his title after Battleground, but then loses it maybe at the Clash of Champions. Well, not Clash of Champions, but at SummerSlam. Then Dean Ambrose would remain on SmackDown, and then whoever he loses the belt to, whether it's Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins, who are part of Raw, they can go back and forth between Raw and SmackDown until they lose the belt, and then they go back to Raw. The same thing I think is going to happen with the women's title. Charlotte is going to be facing Sasha soon, but I think what's going to happen is Charlotte, just like the WWE champion Dean Ambrose, will be able to go back and forth until she loses the belt and she remains on Raw. And if Sasha wins it, then Sasha can go back and forth until she loses it to, let's say, Becky Lynch, and then Sasha goes back to Raw and Becky Lynch can go back and forth. Kind of get the idea? And the same with the tag team titles. The New Day can keep them for as long as they have to, but if they can go back and forth. But let's say they lose the tag titles to American Alpha on SmackDown, then American Alpha would be able to go back and forth, and the New Day would go back to Raw, would remain on Raw until they got another shot. That's what I think they're going to do with those three championships, with the exception, like I said, the U.S. and the Intercontinental, and of course the Raw exclusive Cruiserweight title. But that's what I think is going to happen. I also see SmackDown maybe creating or resurrecting a championship, or creating or resurrecting a championship of their own. They could either resurrect a television championship for WWE, which would be something good, give people opportunities. There's your opportunity deal. Or if it's going to be more wrestling oriented, I could see maybe them taking a page, because I thought about this, taking a page out of Ring of Honor and bringing in what's known as and it would kind of distinct them, make them different from Monday Night Raw. Kind of have them do a pure championship, just like in ROH. ROH used to have that pure championship with certain rules and all that. I think if they would bring a championship like that, create a championship, make that exclusive to SmackDown, that could really differentiate them from Monday Night Raw, because they would have to have a certain matchup that's like a wrestling match, but different rules apply. So I think that might be cool. But overall, though, that's just my thoughts on the draft. Again, I know some people were disappointed by it, and I do agree there were some moves that should have been made differently, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But storyline-wise, like I said, folks, it's basically going to lead to another Authority versus this person. In other words, versus Shane storyline. I think a lot of you know that. So, and as far as the champions go, the three main titles that I think are going to the three main championships, the WWE women's and tag titles. I think are going to go back and forth, but with the stipulation that when the champion loses the title, they go back to the show they were drafted on, or the person or team that they lose it to can go back and forth. So, but that's all I'm going to say on it. You guys let me know what you think down below. Comment if you like, and I'll talk to y'all later.